mystery, fear, enigma encompass the seafaring ghost ships, or phantom ships tales that has been passed around throughout centuries by sailors, anglers and others. These mysterious ships are fantasized as spectral phantasms that materialize in the middle of the sea and disappear quickly, which is apparently a bad omen. In addition, abandoned ships, which are found adrift, left desolated under fearsome and cryptic circumstances, are also included in this category. Albeit these all being marine legends and sometimes lacking authenticity, some of these haunted ships continue to provoke speculation and fearful anticipation. We present you with 5 such mysterious ghost ships of the maritime world that would surely give you an eerie feeling and goosebumps. What could be spookier than a ghost ship? These ships, either real or legend, eerily wander the seas without a crew, setting a course only the ghostly vessel knows. But the Baychimo was not the result of paranormal activity, nor did its crew mysteriously vanish. Rather, the ship inexplicably survived abandoned in the Arctic for decades and seemingly shunned every effort to salvage it. No one knows its true fate, as it seemed content to silently haunt the shores of Alaska until the seas finally took it on one nameless day. The Baychimo's story started out as humble and ordinary as any other vessel. It was originally built as the in Sweden and used as a trading vessel with Germany until 1914. After World War I, it was given to Great Britain as war reparations. It was then acquired by the Hudson's Bay Company in 1921 and used as a cargo and passenger ship working the fur trade in the Arctic. The company renamed her Baychimo and operated her out of Scotland. All in all, it made 9 trips to the Arctic. 1931 was the fateful year for Baychimo. On July 6, it started out from Vancouver on her regular trading run to 8 Hudson's Bay Company outposts in the western Arctic. On this final journey, it continually battled the ice and fog of the oncoming winter. Captain Cornwall and the crew raced to beat the encroaching ice on September 9, when the Baychimo departed from her final delivery stop at Pauline Cove on Herschel Island. Despite all efforts to push past Point Barrow and into the Bering Strait, on September 25, 1931, the Baychimo became trapped in the ice. The wind was not changing and hopes to find a route through the ice pack quickly diminished. Some of the passengers and crew managed to catch 2 planes home. The remaining crew built a shelter and began to settle in for the long winter. As the situation did not improve, further flights arrived in October and November, eventually taking all of the remaining passengers and 10 of the crew. Darkness settled in the north and ruthless winter storms set in. In late November, after the storms had settled, the remaining crew noticed that large ridges of ice had formed and they could no longer see the ship. They risked their own safety by clambering over the ice, but when they did, they saw that the Baychimo was gone. The crew spent several days searching for the ship, but all in vain. It had disappeared. A week later it was spotted 130 kilometers from the crew's camp. The captain and crew routed to find it, but could not reach the ship because of the poor ice conditions. Then, without a sound, it disappeared once more. By February 1932 the crew gave up on finding the ship and were flown home. But as early as March, the ghost ship sightings began. Over the years, several people attempted to salvage the ship, but every time it slipped away once again into the Arctic seas. It seems the Baychimo preferred to silently drift alone in the cold and barren ice of the north. The last sighting of the ghost ship was in 1969 by a group of Inupiat. It was stuck in the ice between Icy Cape and Point Barrow. No further sightings have been reported. Likely, the Baychimo tired of her lonesome haunt and finally allowed the all-consuming ice to do its business. It wouldn't have gone quietly though. The pressure against the steel hull and slow disfiguration would have produced whales of metal on metal. Finally, after a long and dreary existence in limbo, the Baychimo likely now rests in peace in her cold grave beneath the ice. Or does it? Maybe you will be the next to encounter the shadow on the ice. This is the true story of a ship which was sunk by a member of its own crew in 1748, On the 13th of February of that year, at Goodwin Sands near the Kent coast of southeast England, which reappears at the same place every 50 years and has been witnessed by many people so far. The story begins at a chilled morning on Friday. The wind was blowing pleasantly and the sky was clear. There was no sign of a storm. The ship, known as Lady Lovibond, was a triple-masted schooner, heading down the River Thames toward the English Channel on its way to Portugal. The captain of the ship, Simon Reed, was at the peak of his happiness as he was getting married to his love, a very beautiful bride named Annetta. There were festivities going on all over the ship, although at that time, bringing a woman on a ship was considered a bad luck. Every single soul on the ship was happy and celebrating under the deck except one man named John Rivers, who served as the best man at the wedding and was filled with the core of jealousy because of his own secret love towards the bride Annetta. Now the ship came near Goodwin Sands, a quicksand and sea, which is better known as the graveyard of ships as it has eaten up more than 2,000 ships which were disappeared in its sands. John Rivers, drunk and raged by his anger and jealousy, went behind the man who was steering the ship and made a blow on his head so that the poor guy crashed on the deck. And then it happened, John Rivers took the wheel and steered the ship into Goodwin Sands, killing all the people aboard including himself. The story of ship didn't end there. After 50 years from the incident, on 13th of February, 1798, the captain of a coastal vessel, James Westlake, reported almost colliding with the triple-masted sailing ship, and hearing the sounds of merriment coming from it as it passed by. A fishing boat also saw the same. The captain of this boat reported that they had seen the schooner go around and break up. He reported when they went to rescue the survivors, the sands were empty and silent. In 1848 and 1898, also on February 13th, a similar thing happened. Locals spotted what they thought was a three-masted sailing vessel going to collide against the shore. On rushing to provide their help, they found that it had disappeared. Captain Bull Prestwick allegedly sighted her in 1948, and reported that she looked real, but gave off an eerie green glow. In 1998, a large number of people from countries all over the world gathered in hope of seeing this ghost ship through their naked eyes. Fishermen plied the local waters, their boats full of tourists rather than fish, all eager to catch a glimpse of the vessel. But this time, they were disappointed. Nobody knows if they couldn't catch it on the right place or the spirits of the ship went to peace. The answer can only be found on 13th of February, 2048, when a lot of people will be waiting for this legend to become real in front of their eyes. In 1761, a sailing ship named the Octavius departed London bound for China. Having safely arrived at her destination about a year later, she departed China in 1762, and headed towards the Arctic. That is the last her crew is heard from ever again. It was assumed she had been overtaken by the Arctic and was lost along with her crew. Although it is more legend than fact, the Octavius remains one of the most famous of all ghost ship stories. The tale of the doomed ship picks back up October 11, 1775. A whaling ship called the Herald stumbled across the Octavius floating aimlessly off the coast of Greenland. When the ship answered no hails, the crew sent a boarding party. Much to their surprise, on the Octavius they discovered the bodies of the crew and passengers all frozen solid below decks, frozen solid as if trying to escape the cold. The crew found the ship's captain still sitting at his desk. He was midway through finishing a log entry from November 11, 1762, 13 years earlier. In his cabin there was also a dead woman, a dead boy covered with a blanket, and a dead sailor with the tinderbox. The boarding party took only the captain's log before leaving the vessel, because they were unwilling to search it. The ship with her crew and cargo had been adrift for almost a decade and a half. According to the legend, it was eventually discovered in the log that the captain had gambled on making a quick return to England from the Orient via the Northwest Passage. The year had been extremely hot. However, upon reaching the Arctic, Somewhere above Canada, the ship had become trapped in the ice. The crew lasted some time, till the cold and dwindling provisions sealed their fate. The terrified crew of the Herald, fearing of a curse and wanting nothing to do with the ship, left it abandoned, touching nothing. Neither the Octavius or her ghostly crew has ever been seen again. If this tale is true, this would mean the Octavius had completed its passage to the Atlantic as a ghost ship. The ship's last logged position puts it at about was 250 miles north of what is now Barrow, Alaska. The Herald found her adrift off the coast of Greenland. This would actually mean that the Octavius and her crew were the first ship to make the transit. This feat would not be accomplished by a living crew until 1906, when Roald Amundsen completed the passage. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York Harbor on its way to Genoa, Italy. On board were the ship's captain, Benjamin Briggs, his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, along with 8 crew members. Less than a month later, on December 5, a passing British ship called the Gracious spotted Mary Celeste at full sail and adrift about 400 miles east of the Azores, with no sign of the captain, his family or any of the crew. Aside from several feet of water in the hold and a missing lifeboat, the ship was undamaged and loaded with 6 months' worth of food and water. Mary Celeste had a shadowy past. Originally christened Amazon, it was given a new name after a series of mishaps, including the sudden illness and death of its first captain and a collision with another ship in the English. An investigation into whether to grant payment by its insurers to the de Gracia's crew for salvaging the ghost ship found no evidence of foul play. Mary Celeste would sail under different owners for 12 years before its last captain deliberately ran it aground in Haiti as part of an attempted insurance fraud. In 2001, best-selling novelist and adventurer Clyde Cussler claimed to have found the wreck of Mary Celeste, but later analysis of the timbers retrieved from the ship he found showed the wood was still living at least a decade after Mary Celeste sank. Meanwhile, one of the most famous maritime mysteries in history endures: why would an experienced captain such as Briggs, or his sailors, abandon a perfectly sound ship? Theories over the years have ranged from mutiny and pirate attack to assault by giant octopus or sea monster, while the more scientifically minded proposed an explosion caused by fumes from the 1,700 barrels of crude alcohol in the ship's hold. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle even weighed in with a short story published in 1884, in which the inhabitants of the ghost ship fell victim to an ex-slave seeking vengeance. On the less sensationalized end, an investigation chronicled in the 2007 documentary The True Story of the Mary Celeste was able to offer no definite conclusion, but did suggest a scenario in which a faulty chronometer, rough seas and a clogged onboard pump could have led Briggs to order the ship abandoned shortly after sighting land on November 25, 1872. According to the last entry in the ship's logbook, made that morning, Mary Celeste was within sight of the Azores island of Santa Maria, some 500 miles from where the de Gracia would find it 9 days later. The Flying Dutchman, according to folklore, is a ghost ship that is doomed to sail the oceans forever. There have been numerous sightings of the ship, and it is usually spotted from a distance, glowing with ghostly light. It is said that if she is hailed by another ship, her crew will often try to send messages to land or to people long since dead. In ocean lore, the sight of this phantom ship is reckoned by seafarers to be a sign of impending doom. The legend of the Flying Dutchman is said to have started in 1641 when a Dutch ship sank off the coast of the Cape of Good Hope. The Flying Dutchman was returning home to Holland after a trip to the Far East. As the ship approached the tip of Africa, Captain Van der Decken thought that he should make a suggestion to his employers, the Dutch East India Company, to start a settlement at the Cape on the tip of Africa to provide a welcome respite to ships at sea. He was so deep in thought that he failed to notice the dark clouds looming, and only when he heard the lookout scream out in terror, did he realize that they had sailed straight into a fierce storm. The captain and his crew battled for hours to get out of the storm, and at one stage it looked like they would make it. Then they heard a sickening crunch. The ship had hit treacherous rocks and began to sink. As the ship plunged downwards, Captain Van der Decken knew that death was approaching. He was not ready to die and screamed out a curse. He will round escape even if he have to keep sailing until doomsday. Many people have claimed to have seen the Flying Dutchman, including the crew of a German submarine boat during World War II, many holidaymakers and even a king of the United Kingdom. On July 11, 1881, the Royal Navy ship, the Vicomte, was rounding the tip of Africa, when they were confronted with the sight of the Flying Dutchman. The midshipman, a prince who later became King George V, recorded that the lookout man and the officer of the watch had seen the Flying Dutchman, and he used these words to describe the ship. A strange red light as of a phantom ship all aglow, in the midst of which light the mast, spars and sails of a brig 200 yards distant stood out in strong relief. Soon after, on the same trip, the lookout who had spotted the Flying Dutchman accidentally fell from a mast and died. Fortunately for the British royal family, the young midshipman survived the curse.